Police are not doctors and they do not issue criminal charges, says attorney Charles Rudy, who is defending Inkster detectives in lawsuit filed by a father wrongly charged with the rape and murder of his 8-month-old daughter last year. The charges filed against James L. Saltmarshall Jr. were eventually dismissed after the coroner determined Saltmarshall's daughter, Janiah, was accidentally asphyxiated while sleeping in bed with her father on April 20, 2017, and not physically or sexually abused. Inkster detectives, based on medical determinations made by 3 doctors at 2 different hospitals, Dr. Shauna Wright of Garden City Hospital, and Dr. Scott Langenberg and Dr. Christian Bauerfield, both of Michigan Children's Hospital, initially suspected that Saltmarshall's daughter had been molested and possibly a victim of shaken baby syndrome. Announcement of public vigil for baby Janiah Saltmarshall. https://t.co/h6yxtpiopic.twitter.com/2wbs3ymr0. Me Headlines, at Me Headlines, May 18, 2017. Saltmarshall, 23, through his attorney Liliam Diallo, has filed a lawsuit in federal court claiming multiple of his civil rights were violated because doctors and detectives conspired to prosecute him for crimes he didn't commit, based largely on what the prosecutor's office has since called erroneous medical findings. Attorneys for both the Inkster police detectives and doctors believe their clients are protected from liability by immunity laws established for the purpose of good faith investigations into possible child abuse. The Child Protection Law requires law enforcement officers to be vigilant to protect children, the most vulnerable members of society, from abuse and neglect, says a joint discovery plan filed in federal court by the defense attorneys. They are directed to report and vigorously pursue any suspected child abuse. That is exactly what happened in this case. The filing proceeds to say, the Child Protection Law requires any physician to report child abuse or neglect, and presumes that a person acting does so in good faith. Jenna Wright Greenman, who is representing Michigan Children's Hospital and its doctors, Langenberg and Bauerfield, doesn't believe Saltmarshall has a case. The doctors certainly believed reasonably when they first evaluated this child, that it very well could be potential abuse or non-accidental trauma, Greenman said. They did their duty under the law and reported it. A deadly nap. Saltmarshall and his girlfriend, Zuleika Moreno, were temporarily living with their daughter in room 34 of Inkster's Alpine Motel on April 20, 2017 when Saltmarshall dozed off while watching The Fast and the Furious with his daughter snuggled beside him. Moreno was working. Saltmarshall would later tell detectives during an interrogation, the video recording of which MLive reviewed, that the family had been living in the motel for nearly a week because Moreno had recently lost her home and car. Saltmarshall didn't want to leave Moreno on the street like that, he told detectives, so he was watching their daughter and allowing Moreno to borrow his vehicle to work. On the day Janiah was injured, Saltmarshall awoke about 4:30 p.m., walked to the bathroom briefly and returned to find his daughter not breathing on the bed. He called 911 and began administering CPR until an ambulance arrived and transported Janiah to Garden City Hospital. At Garden City Hospital, Dr. Wright examined Janiah and concluded that she had injuries to her anus and a relatively large amount of rectal bleeding, Saltmarshall's lawsuit says. Wright stated that the staff found anal tearing in and around Janiah's rectum and the nature of the injury to Janiah's rectum could only have been caused by something being inserted into her rectum. Saltmarshall was arrested and his daughter was transported to the Children's Hospital of Michigan in Detroit where Langenberg, according to the Inkster police report submitted to the prosecutor, concluded that Janiah had a skull fracture, brain swelling, lung bruising and anal laceration. Dr. Bauerfield further opined that Janiah suffered bilateral retinal hemorrhaging indicative of shaken baby syndrome, the lawsuit says. Contradictions. Janiah died April 23. Saltmarshall was arraigned the following day and ordered jailed on a $2 million bond, however. New contradictory information about Janiah's injuries revealed by the medical examiner at Saltmarshall's April 27 probable cause hearing prompted Judge Sabrina Johnson to release the father on his own recognizance with a GPS monitoring tether. At the hearing, The medical examiner indicated that Janiyah likely had died of asphyxiation caused by Salt Marshall rolling over on her while both were asleep on an adult bed, the Joint Discovery Plan says. By information and belief, the medical examiner indicated that he did not find evidence of skull fractures, shaken baby syndrome or anal penetration, and likely would conclude that Janiyah's death was accidental. None of the parties involved have commented on what led to the drastically different findings of the treating doctors and coroner. On June 12, 2017, Assistant Wayne County Medical Examiner Drive Francisco Diaz officially ruled the death an accident, not a homicide. His report stated there were no visible injuries to the body, no skull fractures, brain lesions, or evidence of prior bleeding in the eyes. Diaz did note a minute, 0.5 centimeter, superficial laceration on the skin around the anus and noted the child's history of chronic constipation. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy, in a brief statement issued June 29, 2017, dismissed all charges in the best interest of justice. Assistant Prosecutor Maria Miller, a spokeswoman for Worthy, said at the time that compelling evidence from doctors indicating there had been a sexual assault and homicide was determined to be erroneous, based on subsequent investigation and forensic testing. While Worthy has in the past charged parents with crimes stemming from unsafe sleeping deaths, she did not charge Salt Marshall. Other factors Rudy, who is defending the Inkster police detectives, says there were other factors, beyond the initially damning determinations of the doctors, that raised officers' suspicions that crimes had been committed. You've got a child who was running around healthy in the morning, staying in a motel with an adult male, and then you have all these other things come up, Rudy said. They know policing, but they don't know medicine, so we basically have to go on what the doctors say. Some of the other statements Rudy and the court filing made in defense of the officers' and doctors' actions. Salt Marshall's girlfriend was at the time on probation for an unrelated third-degree child abuse conviction out of Oakland County, stemming from a 2015 incident involving another of her children. She was not legally allowed to be living with Janiyah. Moreno told detectives the conviction involved an incident in which her daughter was accidentally burned by scalding water. Janiyah had patches of discolorations on her buttocks that resembled bruising. The marks were, however, later determined to be a skin condition known as Mongolian spots. According to Rudy, Salt Marshall wasn't initially arrested and jailed because of his daughter's injuries, but because of 2 outstanding arrest warrants issued because he failed to appear for a traffic citation in Detroit and a public order ticket in Romulus. Detective Munson never suggested which crimes Salt Marshall should be charged with, but instead submitted a blank recommendation form accompanied by an accurate account of the doctor's findings and witness statements. Salt Marshall, in an effort to explain injuries to detectives, who implied someone had inserted an object in his daughter's anus, said someone may have entered the motel room and assaulted her while he was asleep. When asked about the skull fractures and other injuries reported by doctors, the defense says Salt Marshall initially denied that Janiyah had fallen, but mentioned that he had picked her up and shaken her in an attempt to awaken her, and in a later interview, stated that Janiyah had slipped off the bed and struck her head. Salt Marshall's attorney says her client is emotionally destroyed by the ordeal, requires ongoing therapy and is deeply depressed. The power to charge is such a great power that you must be so very careful with that power, because once it's out there, it's so hard to bring it in, Diallo told him live in September. How do you unring the bell? How do you put back together a plate that's been shattered into 1,000 little pieces? You can't. Diallo believes Salt Marshall would have easily been convicted had his case gone to trial and the witnesses stuck to their initial statements. Those are the things that keep me awake at night, she said. The civil case is tentatively scheduled to go to trial on April 9, 2019. The deadline for all parties to submit requested discovery is October 31.